So I think I'm going to continue to do my knitting that I've been working on today, which is coming along nicely. But what I wanted to do is talk about Gilded Age. Season 3 just came out and it was so good. I actually really loved this episode. So when it comes to series in general, this is how I feel. Season 2 or 3 is usually like the best. It's like when they're able to kind of, pour more resources into the series. I feel like they're able to, you just see the increase in budget, I feel like a lot of times. And I feel like the storyline often gets really good, and I really just thought that season 3 episode 1 was so good. I think season 2 left us kind of on a cliffhanger, like I mentioned when I was chatting the other day on like one of my other videos, but I was like really wondering what was going to happen because of the inheritance and everything, and so it was interesting to see all of that play out. But I actually thought that the most interesting, poignant kind of like moment was actually about divorce. And I thought it was super interesting because of the way that they talked about divorce, how there was a certain legality to who could file or to whom could file, and also that there was like this kind of change in culture where previously divorce was not a thing, and now you're seeing that, like, yeah, you have to have a reason, which is adultery. Now, we live in an age of no fault divorce, and so you can just get a divorce for no reason, really. Or like a lot of people cite irreconcilable differences. And I thought that was really interesting, and I thought that the whole scene was interesting, how she was, wanting to, and I'm trying to think of the character's name, but she was trying to get ready for the opera and she was excited to go, but she was kind of like blindsided by her husband's affair. But also just I think it also just speaks to like the senselessness of someone who is in that situation, being her husband. And I thought that it was a really good moment when he kind of asked her to be reasonable, and she said, "You're the one who needs to really do that." And I think that that's really, honestly, was a very interesting reflection, because, and this is just a film reflection, but I will just add it in there. I do think that the Bible does say that the man who hates his wife hates himself, and so I think that you're starting to see a lot of that come out in this particular character, whose names I'm forgetting, so I'm quickly looking it up here now. And then I also thought the ending with Gladys was very interesting, because I thought that a lot of like the marriage, obviously this show is a lot about marriage, but I thought that it was really interesting how she ended with a bad marriage as a prison, and she says, "I know that," and then she leaves. And kind of saying that she was going to be like channeled or funneled into a bad marriage, a bad situation that would like imprison her for life. And I think that's also something to think about when we think about marriage of that time, and how oftentimes women didn't have a choice, and we're facing a lot of family and societal pressures, but at the same time, the suffrage movement was happening and things were changing, and so I thought that was really interesting. I also loved how Mrs. Van Rhijn was all about suffrage and kind of talking about the different causes that were prominent at the time as well. I also loved Oscar. I thought that his character progression throughout the episode was really, really good, and I liked to hear more about how he's going to recover from his failed business dealings. And I also really liked how he said that he was born to be rich, and the other person who he was being kind of compared to was like born to make a fortune, and how those are actually two different skill sets. Okay, the guy who, so it was Mr. Fane, Mr. Charles Fane was the adultery scene, and then his wife, Mrs. Fane. So yeah, I thought that those were kind of like the highlights, I would say, for me from episode 1 of season 3 of the Gilded Age. So if you want to hear more, I may try to do episode reflections or breakdowns. So if you like this, please let me know so that I can continue to make this sort of video. I also realized I got so caught up in talking that I wasn't really knitting, but I think that's more or less all that I had. Oh, one last thought was about the doctor situation, and the doctor not being willing to treat Mrs. Van Rhijn's secretary because of her color. And I thought that the scene following it was actually very interesting, where they were downstairs and the staff was reflecting on what had just happened, and they said, Mrs. Van Rhijn thinks that the rules don't apply to her. That really struck me, because in the case of a sick person who, you know, a doctor should treat due to their Hippocratic oath, you know, I think that in that sense, Mrs. Van Rhijn actually is on the side of righteousness, you know, actually is in the right, but her advocating for what's right is still seen as disrespecting the order of their society, even by those who are at the very bottom of the society. And so I thought that was really interesting, and how maybe certain systems are continually perpetuated. But, oh, and then, yeah, this kind of goes also to the clock and the invention and wanting to kind of make a new life in America for a lot of the people who came over as like servants. And so I thought that this film was, or this episode was really great. It was a great opener for the season, and I'm very excited to see what else happens over the season. I will say, though, that honestly, I am going to kind of say that I agree with Bertha, with Mrs. Russell, which it's nice to see her after seeing her in White Lotus in a totally different character. She looks so different. I don't know if it's like the hair color or what it is, but I like her so much better in the Golden Age. But I thought that it was really interesting how when she was speaking with her daughter, you know, her daughter was like, you know, at one point when we first moved here, you would have been thrilled to even been invited to their room. And she was like, well, darling, like, we've surpassed them. And I thought that that was like a very interesting moment, because I think that that is so much of like what this like new money, old money dance kind of ends up coming down to, where those who exclude at first end up being the ones who are excluded in the end, because they burnt those bridges. But also, like, I did think that it was a very interesting point that I kind of had to agree with, honestly, that Bertha did make, was that when she continues, when her daughter, Gladys, continues to rise, you know, and I think I think this is continually applicable, but when her daughter continues to rise, if her partner or her mate is unable to rise to that same, level, or if they kind of get left behind, it would lead to a lot of resentment, a lot of issues, basically. And I think that this is also something to go back to the adultery conversation concerning the Fanes. I think that this is also something to consider, because I know that Mrs. Fane had a very nice life, and I'm kind of trying to remember a little bit more about Charles Fane, but something is telling me that she kind of comes from a better kind of pedigree. Oh, actually, no. Okay, here it says Charles Fane is a wealthy banker and alderman from an established old money family of New York. He is a relative of the Van Rhijn family through his wife Aurora. Okay, so see, yeah, so she is really the one who's connected to the Van Rhynes, not him. And then Charles Fane and Patrick Morris schemed to take on George Russell. Okay, yes. So, I mean, I'm not super sure, honestly, when it comes to their dynamic, but I could see a little bit of jealousy or feeling like left behind or feeling left in the shadows coming from him as to why he decided to pursue that other widow. And so I think that this is all so interesting, particularly as I feel like we continue to explore different family creation systems. I remember being in law school, and I thought that one of the most interesting books I read was on the purpose of marriage, on child rearing and everything as well. And I really like this film, or this series, because it speaks a lot to the questions that I feel like continue to exist about marriage, and that I think that we should ask if we engage with this historic institution in any way, because we want to know what the history of it is and its background, where it originated or how it's evolved over the years. And so I think that this show, for anyone who's interested kind of in coming of age or marriage type of commentary, this is one of my favorites, honestly. I also am looking forward to Bridgerton, but I do love HBO, and I do feel like a lot of the writing is more nuanced, deeper, and just a little more of a direct social commentary. So I'm excited to maybe come back next week and share about episode 2. So we'll see. I saw a lot of these kind of episode breakdown videos when I was watching White Lotus this past season, and so that kind of gave me the idea, because I think that it's fun. We're able to talk every week. It's almost like going to English class and reading a book and coming and discussing it. So I hope that this can be a fun space. I hope that this new background wasn't too distracting, or that it was a nice, fun change, and I will see you next time.